Hi, VencoreWeather.com, meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, January 18th, a damp and dreary start to the day here. It's relatively mild. In fact, low temperatures this morning are right around where high temperatures should be this time of the year, around 40 degrees or so in the Philadelphia suburbs. We should reach 50 degrees in many parts of the I-95 corridor. There will be some drizzle and fog over the next several hours. Mainly cloudy skies this afternoon. A residual shower cannot be ruled out. Tomorrow looks like a mostly sunny day, probably the nicest day of the week with high temperatures at or above the 50-degree mark. Relatively mild again for this time of the year, but an active weather pattern continues. More rain is on the way for later Friday and Friday evening, and then even more rain late Sunday, Sunday night, Monday time frame. I think that late Sunday into Monday event could turn out to be a significant rain event for the I-95 corridor. And then looking beyond this January thaw period, which will last several days right into the middle part of next week, a colder and stormy pattern looks like it will unfold by the end of next week, and we'll talk about that over the next several minutes. First of all, I'd like to start off with a look at the stratosphere. This is the actual temperature pattern right now, way up at the top of the atmosphere. We're looking centered on the North Pole. The North Pole right in the middle of this right here. Here's where the North Pole is. The U.S. is down in this region right here. Notice low pressure at the very top of the atmosphere on this side of the pole. In other words, this is the temperature pattern right now at about 10 millibars, what we call the stratosphere. And oftentimes this has a big influence on where cold air masses move during the winter time. If there is a stratospheric warming event, that could set off a displacement of some cold air masses. Right now, over Europe, high pressure here, or higher temperatures, warm in the stratosphere over Europe. Meanwhile, down at the surface level, very cold. And we'll see in a moment here, this tends to flip over the next week or so, and that very well could contribute to a change in our weather pattern from this January thaw that we'll experience over the next several days to a cold and stormy period beginning later next week. And here we go. Here's a forecast map for 8 days out at 10 millibars in terms of temperatures. And notice basically a flip in the pattern here. Lower temperatures in the upper part of the atmosphere head towards Europe. Meanwhile, higher temperatures, a stratospheric warming event near the North Pole and headed onto this side of the pole. It flips from this currently to this in about 8 days or so, 7 or 8 days, a week out, according to a GFS model forecast, and most models agree with this. And again, this stratospheric warming event that will bring warmer conditions in the way top of the atmosphere on this side of the pole very well looks likely to contribute to a change in our pattern from this upcoming several-day period of a January thaw to a cold and stormy period beginning the latter part of next week. Well, let's take another, a big picture look at the upcoming pattern change. Again, warmer than normal conditions for the next several days, probably right into the middle part of next week. We're looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly, a map from the GFS ensemble run of last night. All these maps, by the way, from tropicaltidbits.com. This is the current look at 500 millibar height anomalies. A couple things I want to point out. First of all, higher pressure than normal here, centered over the northern plains and the Midwest. Notice not a lot of blocking or high pressure ridging across the northern latitudes. It's one of the things we look for cold air outbreaks into the eastern U.S. Again, this is the current look at 500 millibar anomalies. Here's Canada up here. You're not seeing a lot of orange right now, not seeing a lot of high pressure. In fact, lower pressure than normal over Greenland. Let's go out 5 days, however, and then we'll go out 10 days and see what the GFS ensemble run does to the 500 millibar height anomalies. Well, here we go. This is a 5-day forecast of the height anomalies from the GFS ensemble run. Big changes on the way. Again, that stratospheric warming event will help to set off these changes in the upper part of the atmosphere. But notice, Lots of higher pressure than normal. Lots of orange here, now backing up, actually retrograding across northern Canada. Even Greenland has shifted from below normal to near normal at this time, and a couple of strong troughs in the upper part of the atmosphere showing up here across the southern U.S. and just off the northwest coastline. Let's go out another 5 days. Well, here we go. This is now 10 days out, and notice strong high pressure ridging in the western part of Canada. And from this position, you can envision high pressures in the lower part of the atmosphere sending cold air masses right down into the northern part of the U.S., which will work its way across into the northeastern part of the country. Deep upper level trough here. Again, this is according to last night's GFS ensemble run. 10 days out, situated here in the eastern U.S. So we have the combination of higher than normal pressure in the western part of Canada and lower than normal pressure here in the eastern U.S. Looks like a cold and stormy pattern. The southern part of the jet streak looks like it'll be quite active after we turn colder. Again, the beginning of this colder, stormier pattern looks like it'll be the latter part of next week. We have several days here of a January thaw, milder than normal conditions, right into the middle part of next week. Well, let's see how all this translates to the lower atmosphere, the 850 millibar temperature anomalies. This is the current look, again, from the 0Z GFS ensemble run. Large area of above normal conditions, not only here today in the northeast U.S., but all the way throughout the northern plains and into southeastern Canada. Now, some cold air, colder than normal air, is showing up, and we'll hear about very cold conditions over the next day or two over Alaska, in Alaska, and Greenland as well. And we'll see what happens to this over the next 5 days and 10 days. Well, here's the forecast map for 5 days out. Still very warm conditions relative to the time of the year here in the northeastern U.S., all across southeastern Canada. But notice this cold air tends to move down across Alaska and then down the west coast or just off the west coast of Canada and into the western U.S. Many of you may remember the initial blast of cold air we received here in the northeast U.S. in December kind of came in a similar path where it first cooled down dramatically over Alaska, then western Canada, then the western U.S., then it swept across the nation basically from west to east, from western U.S. into the eastern U.S., and that looks like that'll be the same path that this cold air outbreak will take during the mid and latter part of next week. Again, this is 5 days out. Still warm here in the northeast, but colder air starting to make a move into the western U.S., first across Alaska, then down the west coast of Canada and the U.S. into the western U.S. Let's now go out 10 days. And here we go. Here's a look at 10 days out. Notice that colder than normal weather in the western U.S. sweeps across the nation. By this time, again, this is late next week time frame into the weekend, colder than normal virtually across the nation, and a lot of warmer than normal air situated to our north with that high pressure ridging taking over across Canada. So the warmer conditions kind of retrograde back up to Canada, and colder than normal conditions here across much of the U.S. Again, this is 10 days out from now. Well, before we wrapped up and we basically took a longer term view of things here, 5 and 10 days out, to see how this pattern is going to change by the end of next week from the January thaw that we're experiencing now to a colder and stormy pattern beginning late next week. Well, we do have what I think could turn out to be a significant rain event late Sunday into Monday. Just wanted to kind of focus in on that over the next minute or two. This is a forecast map for Sunday morning from tropicaltidbits.com. By this time, there is high pressure showing up here in the southeastern part of Canada and strong low pressure here across the south central states. Lots of moisture in the warm sector to the east of this low pressure area comes Sunday morning. So a good overrunning surface here with cool air, chilly air in the northeast U.S. come early Sunday morning, anchored by high pressure up to the north and east, and a lot of moisture gathering itself by this time across the deep south. Now, if we just progress through this, some 12 hours later, by Sunday night, here high pressure still situated across southeastern Canada, anchoring a chilly air mass, lots of overrunning, moisture already moving in the form of rain. This will be a rain event, but again, I believe it could turn out to be a pretty significant rain event late Sunday into Monday. The rain already begun here by this time Sunday evening. Strong low pressure will slide up to our west, keeping us on the warm side here, but also funneling in a lot of moisture from the western Atlantic Ocean and the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Let's jump out another 6 hours and then 12 hours. This is now Monday morning. Very vigorous low pressure area just to our south and west. Strong winds pumping in Atlantic moisture and moisture from the deep south. Again, a significant rain event on the table for the Sunday night, Monday time frame. Let's go out another 6 hours. This is now Monday early afternoon and Monday night. Still strong low pressure over the Ohio Valley, still on the warm side here, and some heavy rain likely up and down the I-95 corridor on Monday. And again, it won't be until the latter part of next week where we see some colder air move back into the eastern U.S. So that's it for now. For VencoreWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.